has taken forever for me to put together this video. I have been concerned about the audio quality and the lighting, and if there's one motto that I want to have for this new year, it is to fail often. And even if I fail hard, keep trying and be okay with failure until I learn something new along the way. That is the theme. Some creators do these wrap-ups at the end of the year. I'm so glad that I waited because I always end up finding a favorite at the very last minute of the year, and that was true this past one as well. I'm excited to share which book that was with you in just a little bit. I thought I would start with the books that were published in 2025 that I got to last year, and then I'm going to have some special categories, some special book awards, if you will, toward the end. I love fantasy books, and that is a greater portion of the books that I read every year. My favorite standalone fantasy of last year has to be a tie between The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow and Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. The Everlasting is a story about a historian named Owen, and he learns of the existence of a missing manuscript that tells the story of the legendary Saint Una, a famous knight who sacrificed herself for queen and country, and there's a lot of politics and religion that have been built up in their world around this one figure of Una. As the scholar of this kind of historical movement, Owen is very excited to get access to the book, but when he opens it, the pages are blank. But when his blood falls on the pages, he falls into the past and into the life of Sir Una. As much as he tries to be a passive observer, as he starts to fall for her, he can't help wanting to rewrite the ending. When I read that this book had time travel and fantasy and academia, I was all in. What really gripped me about this book is the development of the core mystery in the story. What didn't work for me was the romance, which is really unfortunate because it's kind of the center motivation of everything that's going on. I just felt that there wasn't enough of a friendship developed between our two main characters. It just kind of jumped to the physical too fast for me. Some weird use of language in the book that was not sexy or romantic to me. The biggest thing I can say about it is that it made me give the author a second chance, because I really did not have a good time with the 10,000 Doors of January. I was also not drawn to continue reading Starling House, so the fact that I gave this another try and it really paid off was a total win for me. So you may recall from my last year's best of video, I think T. Kingfisher was one of my new favorite authors, and this year she came out with one of her new books, which was Hemlock and Silver. I really loved this story. It's a standalone fantasy. It's very puzzle-like, a great entry point to her twisted fairy tale-like books. This is centering on a character named Anja, and she has an unusual fascination with chemistry and the study of poisons in particular. So when a king visits her and solicits her help to find out whether his queen and one of his daughters were poisoned, she realizes that it's not just their lives that are threatened on the way there. Some people don't want the kingdom to thrive, and she has a couple of bodyguards who are accompanying her on the journey. When she arrives at the remote palace, she starts to discreetly investigate what's going on. When she arrives, she soon realizes that Snow's illness is more due to a magical cause than a scientific one. I really liked the desert setting of this book in particular. The humor was also really great. There was also just one moment in particular I remember at the top of a chapter where our main character walks through a door and something happens, and I gasped out loud. So this was a great read. It's a standalone. I do plan to reread it in the future. And I also really liked the cover design for this one, but the colors really grew on me, and I also really like the sprayed edges for this one, and I'm not usually a sprayed edge stan. If you missed it, give it a try. The next is for fantasy series. It will probably come as no surprise, being that one of my favorite books a couple of years ago was The Will of the Many by James Islington. The Strength of the Few is my nomination for this category. I know that There's a lot of excitement for the reversible jacket on this, but I have not flipped it personally because I like illustrated fantasy landscapes. Let me know where you fall between those two. There's very little that I want or need to say about this series, especially if you haven't read the first book. I love the development in the sort of magic system that we get in the second book. I love the multi-POV, which is very unique that we have in this book. It is a cool expansion on what we already got in book one. It is much more darker, a little bit more violent in tone. My husband Jeff is more of a gamer than a reader, but he does love good storytelling, and I convinced him to read book one, and he also read book two after I finished it, and we just love talking about like theories for what's going to happen next with this series. So do with that what you will. If you have a friend in your life who really doesn't read that often, but you think that if it were fast-paced enough, if there were enough twisty things happening that kept them guessing that they might keep reading, I think this is a great entry point. It's not a finished series though. So if your friend hates cliffhangers and they would prefer to have like all of the episodes of a season of Stranger Things out at one time, then maybe this isn't the best recommendation for them. And I do plan to do another video where I talk about recommendations for people who love The Will of the Many. So stay tuned for that. I have so many ideas. For the next book in a series that I loved, I need to give a shout out to one of my favorite booktubers, Victoria from What Victoria Read. She is the person who turned me on to the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. And this past year, I got to read book 4, which is called Silverborn, The Mystery of Morrigan Crow. Last summer, I had the unfortunate experience of kicking a pile of clothes across my bedroom floor, except I kicked my bedpost instead. So this book was such a comfort to me when I was in pain and freaking out. That's probably my best recommendation. This series is so wholesome and cozy, and yet it still keeps you guessing. There's something unique to the fantasy world, and the characters are so lovable. If you're looking for a series to kind of replace your rereads of Harry Potter, you should give this series a try. I cannot wait for book 5. I really hope we don't have to wait as long as we did for book 4. The last fantasy book in a series that I need to tell you about is The Once and Future Queen by Paula Lafferty. Now, I got to read this as an advanced reader copy on my Kobo. That's another story for another video, but I ended up purchasing this one. This is a beautiful book and a great book one in a series. This is a Arthurian tale set in modern day, and we're following Vera, who is Guinevere from the legend. She was on the brink of death, and in order to save her, she was transported to the 2000s, the 20,000s in our century. She's been raised by 2 foster parents, and she's had a whole life. She's gone to school, she has a job, she had been married, and she lost her husband very early on. So she's lived an entire life in our time frame, and she's completely forgotten about her life in Camelot. Merlin arrives and tells her, "We need you back at Camelot because you're the only one who can remember who the enemy is and how we can defeat him. We need you to return in order to save the kingdom." Her family is going through something right now, but she agrees to do it. She goes back in time to Camelot and discovers which parts of the legend are real and what has been fabricated. One of the things she's encouraged to do is to re-establish her relationships with the people in Camelot, including her husband, King Arthur, who she has never met. She doesn't remember this guy. I love that she would rather wake up early and strap on her running shoes and go for a run with Lancelot than walk around the castle. You might have a wait for book 2, especially because there wasn't like a great amount of resolution in this first book. Things are still kind of up in the air. I'm really eager to read the next one. All right, I lied. There's one more book in a series that I need to talk about, and that is the conclusion to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. I reread the first 2 books preparing for this one, and my ranking is still gonna go 1, 2, 3. I liked the first book the best, the second book a little less, and this one was a really fitting end to the trilogy, but I kind of felt like we smudged over like a trustworthiness that was introduced for the main characters, and I can't really talk about that without spoilers, but if you know what I'm talking about, feel free to drop a comment and I'll let you know if that's what I meant. I did appreciate that throughout the 3 books and in this third one, Emily really holds on to her independence and her academic leanings. Like she doesn't become a completely different person for the relationship or for the circumstances, even though she needed to be able to sacrifice herself for Wendell in this book. She doesn't let go of who she is at heart. My next category is mystery or thriller. And I just have one book for this. That is The Killer Question by Janice Hallett. This is her latest puzzly mystery. It has mixed media. You get to read people's emails and text conversations, quiz reports at the end of the quiz nights. This is about like a trivia night at a local pub. And the couple that own it are trying to maintain their weekly events, but they also are not doing very well with the business. And one night this new team shows up and they initially are just excited to have new people there, but then the following few weeks this team continues to win and win and win, and the other teams are suspicious. They're starting to wonder, how are they cheating? Why are they still allowed to be here? Because there were a couple of reigning teams that previously won. So you're trying to figure out, like, how are they cheating? Why are they there? Who are they? And then the pub owners themselves seem to be holding some close secrets as well. So it's a very layered mystery, and it's just so much fun. This one is going to slot just below The Examiner for me. The next category is romance. My favorite romance book of last year was Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I know that this one didn't land for every reader, and if you didn't like it, what did you not like about it? Because we have a very attractive, very likable love interest. I think he might be the best written male love interest. Call that out if you think it's questionable. This is about a couple who fall very quickly for each other. They have a lot of chemistry, but they're about to be split up by miles. Samantha is going to be moving home with her family, her adult siblings, and her father as they are kind of struggling to care for her mother, who is dealing with dementia. Xavier has this thriving veterinary practice that he just cannot afford to leave. He still decides that he's committed enough to their relationship. He's all in.
I just want you to know I'm in. I am all in.
Willing to travel to visit Samantha and to keep their dating relationship going. Really appreciated the genuine care that these two characters have for one another. I think that Xavier is the best love interest that I've read so far, but that's just me. If you have read better, tell me who and what book. Now, I have a little bit of a bridge here. This book has romance in it, but I would classify it as contemporary fiction, and that is The Favorites by Elaine Fargo. This was one of the first books that I read last year. I think it might have been the first book that I ordered through Book of the Month. It is so good. It is so dramatic. It's inspired by Wuthering Heights. Our main characters are called Katerina and Heath instead of Kathy and Heathcliff. First off, this is another book with a mixed media element. So we have docudrama scripts with interviews that showcase our main character Katerina and Heath and their rivals over time. These characters are such a mess, but they really love their sport. They love figure skating. They are really trying to make it into the Olympics and to have their moment, but they also don't know what's on the other side of that. They don't know what they're going to work for or what's going to be rewarding to them after they achieve that goal. If you like books with song references, this one had songs throughout each of the skating programs. If you like Taylor Jenkins Reid, you should read The Favorites. It's kind of like reality television, but better. And it's really hard to stop reading because every chapter ends with one of those, wait, what just happened? Moments. We have arrived at literary fiction. So if you like beautiful writing and complex characters, as well as just very well done character relationships, then you're going to want to listen in for these next few titles. First, I need to talk about a book that I feel was done dirty. The cover is very generic. The title is terrible, but inside is a neat story. This is an emotional and reflective book about returning to familiar places and salvaging past friendships and rebuilding, also just discovering new talents. 30-year-old Freya has emergency surgery and she decides to leave her job as a bartender in Maine and go to her hometown in suburban Somers, New York. She plans to move into the home that her estranged parents left her, and she's going to recover from her surgery there. What she doesn't expect is that her 15-year-old niece, Aubrey, is there waiting for her. Freya and Aubrey have a distance relationship, so while they're working on the house and trying to repair that, they're also working on their relationship. This book deserved so much better. Home of the American Circus by Alison Larkin. In this timeline, in this country, in Somers, New York, there is a statue of the first circus elephant to arrive in America called Old Bet. There is a recurring motif in the story of Old Bet as an overlooked, undervalued, and abused figure. I don't think it was necessary. But if the cover had been 3 people standing in front of that statue of an elephant, that would have made more sense to me. Ignore the title, ignore the cover. You probably will like this book if you like literary fiction. Another beautiful book with a better cover, My Friends by Frederick Bachman. This is emotional, hopeful, and funny. 18-year-old Louisa is our main character, and she has this fixation on a famous painting of the sea with a pier in one corner and these 3 friends sitting on the end of it. And when Louisa runs into one of the friends from that painting, she starts to learn the story of that summer 25 years ago when 4 friends were immortalized in the painting. As you read, one of the coolest things is that painting becomes very easy to visualize for you, and every one of the 4 friends also come to life. One of those reads where when I finished it, I wanted to make something. I wanted to create something, whether that was painting or writing or crafting, whatever it is. And those are the types of books that you want to hold on to. If they inspire you to make something with your own hands, I think that you will love this book as well. I think this one is just going to go above Anxious People for me in my list of Frederick Bachman that I love. We have arrived at the special categories portion of this video, and my first is for the best book to screen adaptation, and that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I've owned it for over a year, and it has famously shown on multiple TBRs. It went with me unread to jury duty, and I haven't read it until the very last month of the year in December when it became a new favorite. I got to see the movie just last night. I'm sorry, are book to screen adaptations actually good now? People We Meet on Vacation, good. Hamnet, good. Wuthering Heights remains to be seen. If you're wondering what to do first, there's so many intricate details in the film that I think you will appreciate even more if you have read the story firsthand. I'm sure you're hearing all the buzz about the film right now, so you might already know the story, but this is about Shakespeare's family, not Shakespeare himself. In fact, Shakespeare is never named. For most of the book, we're reading from the perspective of Agnes, his wife, and Hamnet, his son. The subtitle of the book is A Novel of the Plague, because historically in 1596, the bubonic plague swept through London, and that is when Shakespeare's son, 11-year-old Hamnet, died. If you like tragic books with beautiful writing, and you're okay with some elements of magical realism, I would say adjacent to Joanne Harris writing, I think that you will love this book as well. This was my first Maggie O'Farrell book, and I need to know where to go from here. Should I read The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox or The Marriage Portrait? Or is there another one of hers that I should put on my TBR? My next special category is my favorite arc that I read last year. And this is going to go to The Book Witch by Meg Schaefer. Yes, we have a new Meg Schaefer coming out this year in April. The Book Witch is a funny and mysterious fantasy story, and I think it's really a nostalgic love letter to 90s kids like me. As a book witch, Rainey has sworn to protect the most beloved stories of literature from book burners and saboteurs. Her responsibility comes with a set of rules to avoid interference, both for the integrity of the story and her own safety. But when she takes an assignment in a book of her fictional crush, legendary detective the Duke of Chicago, Rainey is hard-pressed to keep those rules unbroken. This book is surprisingly meta. It's very easy to read. It's very cute. A lot of internal book references, of course. And if you didn't like The Wishing Game, you still might like this book. You might like The Book Witch better. It kind of feels like a middle grade book that was aged up to an adult book. There's book hopping, there's book references, there is a little bit of like kicking your feet, romance dialogue. I loved it. I'm excited for it, and I hope you like it too. My next special category is an author fangirl award, and that is because I have started to follow Jillian McAllister on Instagram. And I love how transparent she is about how hard it is to be a published author or a working writer and a mom. It's just refreshing to read about something so real and to also get advice on the writing process and giving yourself extra grace. That is my fangirl moment. The arc that I got to read was Caller Unknown, and we get to expect this book just about Mother's Day in May, which is perfect because it's a mother-daughter thriller. Simone has literally been counting down the days until she would see her teenage daughter Lucy. They scheduled a girls' camping trip 2 weeks in the Texan desert to catch up after Lucy's time away at theater camp. Their reunion is short-lived, however, because Simone wakes up in their vacation rental to discover Lucy is missing. Her personal items are still in the bedroom with a surprising addition, an old flip phone with a mysterious message. Simone is trying to do her best by her daughter, and she is secretly excited that she decided to live at home instead of go to college, but on the inside she wonders if everything is okay with Lucy, if that was the best choice for her. She knows that her goal is to help her daughter spread her wings, but she is contented and happy that her daughter is close by. So this whole adventure opens up the opportunity for them to talk about that and to make some decisions. Every character in this novel, from Lucy to her father to like third-party characters, they have a solid level of unreliability that makes it just this sizzle of suspicion the entire time you're reading. The plot feels predictable on the surface, but the ending has a twist and it is so good. I have to specially mention a series that I finished this last year, and that is the Seven Water series by Juliette Merlier. I unfortunately have to tell you that I don't think the final 3 books are as good as the first 3 books. The characters in the first 3 were more relatable for me personally, and I cared more about their journey and the adventure than I did in the final 3. But if I had to rank the final 3 books, I would say book 4, book 6, book 5. That's the order that I would put them in. My next award is called the Long Time Coming Award, and that's for a book that I have heard talked about and thought would be up my alley for a while, but I finally picked it up, I finally read it. And that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So before this past year, I had a very cursory experience with Shakespeare. I have the plot locked on Romeo and Juliet. I feel like Wishbone did that for me. Midsummer Night's Dream, check. Vague memories of reading Hamlet, and I know that King Lear is about a king who is mad, and Macbeth has 3 witches. And that's it. You can read this book with no previous knowledge of Shakespeare, and see what it brings to your mind. And that's what makes it perfect for dark academia, because these characters live and breathe Shakespeare, and their college is supporting that academic obsession. It only took me a few chapters to smell hints of the secret history in this book. It really is dark academia. The set and costume descriptions, my inner theater kid joy was activated hardcore with this book. And by the time I turned the last page, I knew every one of these students like I had been a witness to their passions and tragedy firsthand. The solving of the mystery does take a backseat to the effects of the murder, like how they're feeling about it in this closed cast. I was never once bored with that. I really wanted to see how it was affecting all of them. Would I say that I'm willing to read Shakespeare for personal enjoyment after reading this novel? Maybe. I have two last recommendations for you, and then some honorable mentions that are just for cover design. So my favorites to recommend, first I'm going to start with romantasy, and that is Dangerous Assassin by Elizabeth Wheatley. I gave my physical copy to a friend of mine, and she read it, and she said that she loved it so much she needed to buy the next two books. So that immediately got me curious, and I decided to read it. I knew I was going to like the series, but the first book was definitely a mashed potato. It's now going to be my go-to rec if you like Fourth Wing or Sarah J. Maas. Disclaimer, I have not read either of those. I ended up being completely surprised by the plot because I am a fan of Ella Enchanted. That is maybe my all-time favorite book. And this story is clearly inspired by that. We have a main character who is kind of under an oath of obedience to her father, and it just gets transferred to another person. The yearning and the romance is so well done, but it's also not carrying the weight of the entire story. And the elemental magic system is really easy to grasp. You don't have to get an info dump in order to be caught up to that and enjoy the story. The politics are straightforward, and so it's really just the mystery and the peril behind that curse that captivated my interest. I do plan to continue in that series this year. If you had asked me what's your favorite book of last year, just one answer, it is The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn. Similar to Hamnet, beautiful writing, compelling character portraits, and I had no idea what the story was going to be. This was a cover buy. Set in England in 1928 at Chilcombe Manor, which is a house alongside the English Channel. And one summer, a whale carcass washes on shore. And the laws of the land say that if that happens, it belongs to the king. But the eldest daughter of the family, 12-year-old Christabel, decides to ask for permission to claim it for her family. As it, disintegrates, it becomes just the bones. She claims it as a theater with her two siblings, Digby and Flossie. They start to have their own performances in this theater, and it becomes an attraction that people travel from all around to see her siblings perform and her original scripts. It's just at the beginning of World War II when Christabel becomes a young adult, and she and her brother Digby become British secret agents on separate missions in Nazi-occupied France. So all of their play acting over the years becomes essential to their survival during the war. Christabel is similar to Agnes in Hamlet. Christabel is an unforgettable protagonist, and she uses all of her gifts despite a lack of recognition from the world. I'm pretty sure this book made me cry at the end of it, and that always is automatic 5-star in my book. So that is my second love to recommend title. As I'm winding down, I couldn't help but mention some of my favorite cover trends of this past year. This is my favorite use of color in the cover of Swept Away by Beth O'Leary. I've seen the newer edition of this paperback, but this one still is my favorite. For typography, I was really into handwritten styles this past year, and I'm hoping to see more of that this year. My favorite illustrated cover was Recipes for an Unexpected Afterlife by Dustin J. Moonden. Really love the details in this illustration, little intricate characters and house and bakery. The colors and the illustration are my favorite. For a book that has a painting on the cover, I loved rereading The Weird Sisters by Eleanor Brown. And I also liked The Enchanted Greenhouse and the naked hardcover for Wild Reference by Rebecca Ross. Favorite photorealistic cover was for The Favorites in this edition. I'm so excited for a fresh year of reading. I hope you're staying warm. I hope you're reading good books, that you're loving what you read. I've got more for you coming this year, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Take care.